is an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering the VVitch, a freaky film, and I am here with a guest, a special wannabe Spoil Me episode with Tony Collien. I'm really excited about talking about this movie, which I have wanted to watch for a long time. Thank you, Tony, for commissioning this, and welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am Natasha.
And I'm Tony.
And those of you who are in the crowdcast will notice that I am alone. Tony does not have a camera. So he will be able to hear him, but you will not be able to see him. So I'm just very much on the spot right now. And I hope that I can satisfy you all. So, Tony, welcome. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
And why did you choose this movie?
Well, you put up the list around beginning of October of just movies that you're like, hey, if you want to commission, these are movies I'm interested in. And since, it's getting close to Halloween, you had several horror films on there. I thought this would be a good one because I really enjoy it, and it's different, and it'd be fun to talk about.
Did you see it when it came out in theaters?
I did not see it in theaters, but I heard some people talking about it on a podcast. I think it was on, the Geek Box.
Okay.
And he talked about, he didn't even know what to think about it at first, but the more he watched it, the more he thought about it, the more he liked it. And then I saw some, good reviews, and I was like, all right, cool, let's do this.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I feel the same way, actually. I only watched it last night, and I watched it very late at night, as I did with The Exorcist, which I did for Unsober a few weeks ago. And when it ended, I was sitting there, just staring, kind of wait.
The ending is strange.
It's a really strange ending, and the more space I've kind of given it, the more I actually like the ending. But it definitely caught me off guard because it's so far outside of the tone of the rest of the movie.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm not sure how to start on this. There's
definitely a cut of this movie where you just end it 5 minutes earlier, as she's looking at the tree, the farm in ruins and being cut,
Yeah.
That's a nice artsy ending. Leaves it a little bit open-ended. But one, the way that the director presents the movie is as a New England folktale.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like a story that people from back in the day would actually tell.
Yeah.
And if someone's telling this story, they're going to say, hey, this is the path to ruin, and, you could become a witch.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I think in terms of the title of the movie, she is the witch.
Yeah.
And so you kind of have to see that complete transformation.
Yeah, I think that the fact that it's being billed as the New England folktale, like you said, really came through right away. The whole setup for everything, and there's a lot. I don't know how many really traditional folktales people who are listening to this have read, but those fuckers are bleak.
Oh yeah,
a lot of the time,
especially
and even
the Puritans.
And even ones that are old classics like Hansel and Gretel start off with, we can't feed our children, so we're luring them into the woods to die and leaving them there. Yep. And that's the fucking premise of it, which is really dark. Mm-hmm. So when it starts to come up in this story that they're looking to basically get rid of their children somehow.
Yeah, Thomason especially.
Yeah, it really feels like a callback to all of that. So, all right, we start off this movie with the opening scene in basically a courthouse at what is only known as the plantation. We don't really get a firm place, do we?
No, it's, early 1500s New England, I assume.
I think I read that it was 1630.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's when they started coming over, 1600s.
Yeah. So this family is in front of a bunch of judges, magistrates, what have you.
Yeah.
And the father, the patriarch of the family, is being censured for pridefulness.
I think basically he was, being a dick and being like, hey, you guys aren't, following the Bible correctly. I know how to follow the Bible correctly.
Which is really, when we get into like things that happen a little bit later, even more egregious, that he like wound up putting his family in this position.
Yep. And
for what? Because it turns out that he's not really a good person. It's sort of, I mean, I hesitate to ever use absolutist language like a good person, but with him, it feels like he was given so many chances to like make things right. And he does wait until there's absolutely no other choice and the damage is already done.
Yep.
So they banish the family and tell them that they tell him, so, all right, go and collect your things and get out and trouble us no longer.
They even give him like one more chance. They're like, hey, do you want to stop being a dick? And he's like, no, I don't.
Yeah. I could not with my not if my conscience told me otherwise.
Yep.
I should note that the manner of speech in this is very stylized Old English, like with thous and ye's instead of you and.
It's authentic Old English.
It really took some getting used to like understand
Did you watch
what
the
they were
subtitles?
saying. Initially, we had the subtitles on because we often have the subtitles on for everything.
Okay.
But there were lots of brackets with like eerie humming and goats bleating, chickens cackling, and I was like, I don't need this, so I turned it off.
Yeah,
and then I started to be like, I don't know if I can understand anything that they're saying. Actually, maybe I should turn it back on. I started to pick it up and be okay without it. And then it came to the scene much later where Caleb is possessed.
Yes.
And we could not understand a word coming out of his mouth. And so we had to turn it back on again for that scene and just left it on pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of necessary for this movie unless you really like get used to it.
Yeah. So
I can't imagine trying to see it like in theaters without subtitles.
Oh, I know.
Oof.
I was thinking that too. Like,
That's
not
probably why
only...
I had a negative audience reaction. Is partially because of that.
I didn't realize it had a negative audience reaction.
Not that it was hated by the audience, but, critics loved it, so I'm sure some people were like, oh, it's a scary movie, critics love it, and then they're like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, I could see that happening. Because I was thinking, not only like the language issue, but there are such long, drawn-out, slow moments that I feel like a lot of people might not like.
Especially if you're used to, like, modern horror, where there's jump scares and, crazy things happening. It's very slow and mostly subdued.
The slowness was hard for me. And by hard, I don't mean I really did not like it and I had to power through it. I mean, it was so tense that I was ready to claw my own face off.
Yes.
I was freaking out a couple times. Like, just a slow pan over the farm, and I'm just like... oh my god, there's going to be something there, there's going to be something there, there's going to be something there. And I was like rocking back and forth with my hands over my eyes. And Owen's like reaching over, yanking my hands away from my face, going, you have to watch it. And I'm like, I don't want to. But of course I had my eyes like this so that I could see out.
What's great too, though, is that the movie though doesn't like present you with much imagery that's like really messed up. Mm-hmm. It's all just slow dread.
Yeah. Yeah, and the knowledge that these people are such fundamentalist and in a way very superstitious that everything is laced with a lot more meaning because of that. Like, there are things that could be throwaway lines if it were a different era and a different story. But in this, you know what kind of consequences something like that can have. And it just ups the stakes so much, even though it's a really innocuous seeming moment or line.
Sure.
So they find this like patch where they decide that they're going to make their homestead, and it's so funny because like they kneel to like thank God, and he and his wife are looking at each other with this like like really
rapture.
Enormous like this is it. And you see the spot that they've picked, and it's grim. And I'm like, why are you guys happy about... Look at this. Oh, my God. It's really frightening already, and there's nothing there.
Yeah.
And they build a home, a barn. They've got, like, quite a lot happening, considering how few of them there are. I guess there are people in neighboring areas that we don't ever really see that maybe could have come over and helped them, like, you know, raise the walls and put the roof on and stuff like that. But the house and barn, there's a yard outside of the barn, and there's, like, an area where they have corn shocks.
Yep.
That are... And when you see the view of the place from far away, those corn shocks are the spookiest things I've ever seen. I really like, they look like a bunch of like hooded figures, like in white, standing, huddled up, waiting on the side. And this really just starts off as a family trying to make it. But they're having all kinds of weird bad luck.
Yeah, the corn's rotten, basically.
Yeah, and animals are getting sick. Much later, she's trying to milk the goat, and there's blood in the milk. Or maybe, I say blood in the milk. It really seems like it's just blood.
I think, yeah, it's just blood, I think. At that point, things were too far gone.
Yeah. So the first thing that happens is, how do you say her name again?
Thomason.
Thomason. What a
like
weird
Thomas
name. I never heard that name before.
Yeah, I assume it's like an actual real name. It's just probably fell out of favor. The female version of Thomas.
Because I would think it would be like an extra A, like Thomasina. But they just end it with Thomason, which feels unfinished. And she's playing with the baby, Sam, and is playing peekaboo. And covers her face. Peekaboo! Covers her face. Peekaboo! And she does it a few times, and then the last time she uncovers her face and looks down, and Sam is gone. And there is this weird scuttling sound.
Oh, I don't know if I ever noticed that, the sound.
Are you serious? The sound comes up over and over again in this movie. You didn't notice
that?
No,
I just mean that particular sound of, like, the scuttling with the baby.
Yeah, it's like, it sounds like... I'm trying to think of a way to describe it. It sounds as if something had long legs and was running through... thick like grass and like brambles really, really quickly.
Oh,
like,
man.
Oh, Jesus. And it's super, super quick. And that same sound comes up every time that they sense the witch is nearby.
Yes, yes.
And it's the freakiest sound. I hated it. It immediately just like, as if the baby disappearing isn't in itself freaky enough.
Yes.
That sound just... And then we do something that I didn't expect. Obviously, I figure there's going to be either a witch or an imagined witch.
Yes.
But we get to see the witch right away here. Which I really wasn't thinking was going to happen this soon. But we see a figure, like, scuttling through the woods in this red cape, holding the baby, bringing the baby into this hut, and like stroking its skin.
Yes.
And pulling out a knife.
Yep.
And when we come back, because it cuts away after that, we don't see the knife go in.
Again, the movie doesn't get too gory, which I like.
Yeah. Because I was really like, what are they gonna...
Right.
And when it cuts away, I thought, okay, are they trying to trick us and make us think she's doing this and she's not? But then it cuts back, and this naked woman is using basically a whole tree trunk and like a whole branch as a mortar and pestle.
Yeah.
And is grinding up what one must assume is the baby.
Yep. And you see like the bloody stump too.
You do?
Oh yeah, you see, I mean, I don't know exactly what the baby was sitting on, but like it cuts to like her sort of manipulating something, and the blood is like, the stump is just covered in kind of like gristle and blood.
I didn't see that part. Oh God. Yeah, and she's like smearing it all over herself.
Yep.
And so this was when I started to be like, oh, okay, we're going real classic witch here. Yes. We're going like bathes in the blood of the innocent to keep her youth kind of witch. which I'm a big fan of, frankly. Like, this was a thing in Penny Dreadful as well. There's a witch who, like, literally fills her bathtub with the blood of young women and sinks into it, and it's pretty sick.
Yep.
But yeah, I wasn't expecting to encounter this right away. Like, this is in the first 20 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, I have to admit, too, this is my first rewatch.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't remember them getting that explicit about the witch this early.
Yeah, I was really startled by that. And it, like, I think it was a really smart move because they set that up, but then they don't do anything else with this witch for a long time.
Yeah, at least like another half hour.
Yeah, so you get to, like, be with this family and watch them, like, implode. And if you didn't know about this witch, you would really just think it was this dysfunction. Which, obviously, it is still.
Mm-hmm.
But you would think it had no basis in anything, and we know that it does, which makes everything so much sadder, in a way.
Right. Because if they, like, really, really knew about this outside threat, maybe they'd come together more.
Mm-hmm. That's a good way to say that, yeah. I think that is what it is. It's like, you guys have an actual enemy out there.
It's a wolf, because they don't want to think about the possibility of the supernatural.
I mean, if you were in their situation, what explanation would you be able to come up with that would satisfy you? I can't think of anything that anybody could say that I'd believe that would feel like it made sense.
If we can go back for just a second to the peekaboo.
Yes.
That is like one of my favorite horror moments probably ever. Because the way the camera cuts back and forth too, you see like Anya Taylor-Joy, who by the way this is her first movie.
She's amazing.
She's great. You see like, you know, the camera is on her face and she's going peekaboo, and then a hard cut baby, cut back and forth, and you're just like, what the fuck's going to happen, man? What's going to happen, man? And then the baby's just gone.
That's actually what I think I'm going to use as the image for this episode. Because I saw a still of her with her hands over her face like this.
That's a good one.
It's just that, and it's so scary. I don't know why. Mm-hmm. But you're right. Like, it's a really tense moment.
Yeah.
In what should be like an innocent fun. And it's also daylight. Mm-hmm. And outside. Like, everything about that scene is really riding against the tropes that you're used to of a scary scene. Yeah,
especially you're watching it, you know, and you're like, all right, something's going to happen here. The way it's like slowly building, you got the eerie music, and then I didn't even notice the sound, but once that arrives, and you're like, okay, what's going to happen? Is she going to get like this weird vision of a demon baby, because that's what you're used to in crappy horror movies?
Right.
Or, you know, she looks up and she sees something on the tree line, but it's like, the scariest is just that the baby's just gone. Like, instantly, too. Like, you know, I'm sure, like, later she, like, rationalized it, but there's no way a wolf just took a baby in 2 seconds and then disappeared.
And that you didn't hear its feet hitting the ground, and that didn't leave a trail of any kind. Like,
so messed up.
Yeah, I think I expected when she, like, runs towards the woods for her to catch a glimpse of something.
Right.
But that would give too much evidence to there being something there, and it's really there being absolutely no explanation that tears everybody apart. Mm-hmm. Which is something that I've talked about on other podcasts, that for me, an absolute nightmare scenario is something happened to something like somebody disappearing, really, is the thing, and you don't have any idea what happened to them, and you never actually get closure. Mm-hmm. And that's, I mean, for all they know, if he was just abducted, he could be alive somewhere else and being raised by somebody else. And like, you don't know, you know? So yeah, naturally, because of human nature being what it is, her mother blames her.
Yeah.
And is super angry and resentful of her, and does not accept any of her explanations, because there's nobody there to see this happen. Right. Of course.
How sudden it is. It's not like she was neglectful.
Yeah, exactly. And this is sort of reinforced in her mother's head later when she comes over from, I think she was like in bed praying, and she comes out and the twins are like running rampant while she's trying to do chores. And she's like, her mother's telling her, you're supposed to be watching them. And she's like, well, they just don't listen to me. And it just makes it look like she doesn't really give a shit. Yeah. Even though we know that the twins are actual monsters from hell. That, like,
they are the brattiest children. I love it.
They were the creepiest part of this movie.
Yeah, they kind of were.
Forget the witches. These two in their fucking weirdo outfits.
Black
they're
Phillip,
all like,
Black Phillip.
And they've got this like layered thing on so that they're like rounded.
Yeah.
They look like little dolls.
That's true, yeah.
Oh, I hate them
especially
so
combined with the I forget what you call them, but the corn things. Like, it just evokes this image of like creepy rural nightmare. Yeah.
And they're I was really surprised at the fact that this family is as fundamentalist as it is, and yet they're allowed to play with this black goat and like sing songs. I was like, is nobody picking up on this? This feels really like it should be a problem for you guys, and I'm surprised.
Right. They're literally joking. They're like, oh, this goes the devil, this goes the devil.
Right. And I was like, how are you even allowed to say that out loud?
Yeah.
What is the father's name again?
Oh, I have it written down. They actually have pretty plain names. It's Kate and... Let's see here, 1 second.
I feel like it's Daniel or something, but I...
Not Daniel.
Because her brother's Caleb, and the two twins are Mercy and... something.
Yeah.
And then Sam is the baby. Kate's the mom. Wow, I really can't remember. But this... I mean, the mom played Lysa Arryn in Game of Thrones. And the father played Dagmar Cleftjaw in Game of Thrones.
Okay.
And he has...
Caleb is the one son, not the twin.
Right, yeah. And the twins were Mercy and something, and I couldn't remember the other twin's name.
William. Will is the father.
Is the father, okay.
Yep. William and Catherine.
The father has the most crazy voice.
Yes, he does. That's also, like, just disturbing, too, and, like, in this setting for some reason.
I need him to do an audiobook of something.
It's nuts. His voice is so deep.
It's so deep that you're almost like, is that actually a human voice, or is that altered?
Yeah, it almost sounds like a demon voice.
You're just like, what? So yeah, I would very much like hours of that voice in my ears, please, because it's so crazy. So somebody get him to do an audiobook, and I don't know what audiobook he'd be appropriate for. It would have to be something about like barbarians and death. But he brings Caleb out into the woods with him because he has laid traps, and the whole deal is that he traded his wife's silver cup for these traps. Mm-hmm. And that cup was a gift, like a wedding gift from her father, I think she said.
Yes.
And he has not told her yet that he has done this, and he has not told her that he has traps at all, and they are not supposed to go into the woods. Like, there's just a vibe that they all are aware of, that the woods are not safe. Mm-hmm. So the fact that he is bringing Caleb out there to do this with him is a no-no. And they're only doing it because she's abed and doesn't know where she's not aware of where they're going. And they're hoping they can get home before she gets up. And everything is rotting, so they really need food, and they're trying to do their best. Yeah.
And he keeps making, like, excuses, too, like, oh, I'll tell her later when she's not, like, fresh of grief.
Right.
But, like, really, he's just kind of a coward.
He really is.
Yeah.
I guess because of the moral courage I felt like he had shown when he was being kicked out. Mm-hmm. I didn't, obviously, I'm giving him a huge benefit of the doubt in that scene because I don't know exactly what his transgressions were in the first place.
Yeah.
So in that scene, I'm just kind of trusting that he felt a certain way and they were just not seeing eye to eye, but he had his principles and he was going to stick to that, which in a way you can respect even if you don't necessarily agree to whatever those are. Mm-hmm. But after this scene, when he lets his son lie for him to their mom, and then he watches his daughter get picked apart.
Yeah.
I really fully expected him to step forward, at least during the cup scene at dinner. And it was really hard to watch. Yeah.
That's a great scene. And it's kind of like, what I like about this movie is, you know, there's supernatural forces, obviously, but mostly, mostly they just kind of nudge the family to tear itself apart, which is often like the best horror is when that's kind of like what happens.
Agreed.
Like The Shining, or I haven't seen it all, but Haunting of Hill House on Netflix. Yeah, Babadook. Yep, that's a great example. That's oftentimes the best horror is when the supernatural just nudges the people to be their worst selves.
Yeah.
And this is kind of like, obviously it kicks off with a witch stealing a baby. Mm-hmm. But besides for that, like, this is kind of the start of like the disintegration.
Yeah. Yeah, so the scene at dinner, her mother notices that the cup is missing and assumes that Thomasin did something with it because she hates her daughter now.
Yep.
And is just basically finding reasons to despise her, mistrust her, anything, because we find out that she's low-key planning on sending her away. And I think is just sort of trying to build a case against her in her mind.
Sure.
And it's really hard to watch because you know that Thomasin is aware that this is happening also. And the mother is trying to, like, poke and prod and be like, well, it was there, and I certainly didn't touch it, and I don't know what, and, like, the father is watching this whole thing, and the most that he does is say, she said she didn't touch it. Mm-hmm. And I really did think that was leading to him actually telling the truth. Mm. But it isn't. Spoiler alert.
No, he's a coward.
He really is.
I kind of feel, too, like, the way he comes to her defense is part of, like, what starts the, like, mistrust of Catherine. Catherine starting to mistrust those two together.
Yeah.
Because
she feels like
it's
they're
weird the way
plotting
he comes
against
her the way he comes to her defense. Like, it is weird.
Yeah, when you don't realize that he has a guilty conscience, there's no particular reason for him to take her side.
Yeah, it's like, why would you just assume she's telling the truth, like, in this way, and be so certain about it?
So, this whole moment is just ugly, because it's the beginnings of the fraying of everything. And as they're eating, like, after this has seemed to calm down, this cup thing it looks like she maybe is going to let it go, at least for the moment. You hear the goats bleating. And she's like, oh, really? You didn't even put the goats to bed? Mm-hmm. And so Thomasin gets up and goes outside to do that. And I can't remember what happens in this scene. I feel like she sees something.
Basically, she goes out there, and it's very simple, and there's a rabbit.
Right, the rabbit.
Which I assume is probably the witch.
Yeah, that's what I figured that was the rabbit as soon as it showed up when William and Caleb were out in the woods, because they're about to, like, shoot it, and I'm like, that rabbit knows you're there, is sitting stock still and staring straight at you.
Yeah, acting
That's
real
a
funny.
witch. And then the gun that he fires to shoot it explodes in his face?
Yeah, like, kicks back or something. The gun misfires.
That's a witch.
Yep.
So it's in the barn, and it shows up a bunch of different times, and at one point, it's when Caleb...
The creepiest rabbit you've ever seen.
It really is, right? At one point, it's when Caleb and Thomasin are in the woods together, and, like, the horse shines. Like, the horse doesn't want to go anywhere near it. Which I really like that detail of the horse just being, like, terrified of this tiny creature that it could pummel into the ground with one hoof. So then we do the next day, and this is when we really get a sense of what little torments the fucking twins are.
Yes.
They're running around playing with this goat. she's trying to get them to calm down and be quiet because their mother is really like, she's just distraught and praying and in bed and barely like getting anything done during the day and not sleeping at night.
Yeah, poor thing.
And they will not shut up. And when her father and Caleb arrive home and he sees that they're playing with Black Phillip out of the pen, he freaks out and wrestles the goat back into the pen and falls on his ass and gets his clothes all dirty.
Yep.
So Kate tells Thomasin to go wash her father's clothes down by the creek to get her away from the house. And we see the twins come and like just give her all kinds of shit. There's several things happening. Caleb is like having weird incestuous thoughts about his sister.
Yeah, he's on the verge of puberty and he's like, oh, she has boobs.
Yep. And it's really kind of like extra upsetting when you see the scene previous where he's like telling his father how he's full of the filth and blood of sin and wickedness and that constantly.
Yeah, we haven't touched upon it too much, but just constantly throughout this movie, it's hammered into you how much that like deep Puritan shame. And
how terrified he is of the fact that Sam wasn't baptized and he wasn't baptized. And so if Sam is dead, he's in hell.
Yeah, and just so deeply shameful of like their human nature. It's like, yes, you have sexual desires, you're a boy in puberty, but they're just so deeply ashamed of that.
Yeah. It's really like mind-blowing to me that anybody would hinge whether or not they could get into heaven on something like baptism, which is like can only be performed by a particular person.
Right.
It's just so impractical that to have your whole salvation like relying on that
for sure
feels like such a bad idea. It's just a bad idea. Period. Not just like setting aside all logic and whatever, whether it's true or not. Just not a good setup in general, you know?
You mean like if God set that up, it's like, hey, why'd you do it that way?
Yeah. God, if you're going to set that up, have us be able to baptize our own children in like any creek or stream around.
Sure.
But don't make it so that like one person in a 300-mile radius can do it so that a child's, 9, 10 years old at this point and they still have not been able to get him baptized? Like, that feels like a real bad oversight. It's the bureaucracy isn't there. We need to have this set up and established in place if this is what you want to do.
Was it established that Caleb wasn't baptized?
Yeah, because he asks his father about where Sam is and then says, and then if he is, what about me? What could happen to me? And starts flipping out in the woods.
See, I almost took it as not necessarily that he wasn't baptized, although maybe that is what they were trying to imply, but just, that he's feeling so much guilt and shame over these impure thoughts and things of that nature.
Well, that was the first time, and I'm pretty sure that Kate flat out says it later on when they're fighting and the kids are hearing through the roof, through the ceiling, because I think Caleb gets a look on his face then. And I'm not sure if maybe this time when he's talking to his dad, he was just talking about the impure thoughts and maybe he wasn't aware that he hadn't been baptized. Mm-hmm. Because he gets a look on his face that seems almost shocked. And it could be either that he didn't know he wasn't baptized or that his father had assured him so thoroughly that it didn't actually matter and that only God determines that when his mother voices the same concern, he realizes that his dad might have been full of shit and lying to him to calm him down.
Right.
But yeah, so he's having these moments and then Mercy I'm the witch of the woods. And
so creepy.
Keeps poking and prodding at Thomasin until finally Thomasin snaps.
Yep.
And does something that I think if she had really stopped to think it through, she would have realized what a completely terrible idea this was.
Yeah, it causes a lot of problems for her later, too.
It does. So she tells Mercy, I am the witch, and I gave the baby to Satan after making a bargain with him, and signed the book in my own blood, and I dance naked with him in the woods by the firelight.
I slip out of my body at night as a spirit.
Right. And Mercy is very freaked out by this. And Thomasin does not give a shit. She's delighted that Mercy is finally afraid of her in any way.
Yeah, they have power over that demon child.
You know? And I really feel for her in that moment. Like,
Absolutely.
Honestly, they're such awful fucking brats.
Oh, they're the worst.
And she, like, slaps her. She does something where they're, like, rolling around on the ground together.
Yeah, she's just kind of clutching her and, you know.
Okay. And after Mercy finally, like, runs away, promising never to tell, which, of course, you know she's going to tell, Caleb is just like, yo, seriously, what the fuck was that? Why would you do that? What are you trying to accomplish here? And you can see that she's, like, a little ashamed of herself, but also it was probably very satisfying in its way.
Yeah.
And that sort of sets everything up for later. So we have the fight between Mom and Dad, where they announce that they're going to find a place for Thomasin with this, like, rich family back at the plantation, I guess?
Yeah, basically, I don't even know, well, they probably are more upper class, I guess, but just send her away, she can work somewhere, she can stay with them.
And the reasoning behind this is that the mother feels, since she got her period, that now she doesn't need to be at home anymore.
Yeah, which happened a lot back in the day.
It's such a strange, arbitrary, like, marker to me. Mm-hmm. Right before recording this with you, a couple hours earlier, I did Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. And it's a very, like, puberty-centric book where Margaret is super concerned about when she's going to get her period, if she's going to be the last of her friends to get it, if that makes her a baby, and all of this stuff. And I was saying in the recording that was something that I did not relate to at all. Yes. Because I got my period when I was 9 years old. Mm-hmm. And I guess Judy Bloom, Carrie the co-host, had said, did not get her period until she was 16.
Wow.
So it goes so wildly all over the map that using whether a girl has gotten her period as the marker for whether she's ready to leave home is madness to me.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I understand that this was the way it was, but sending me away to live with a family when I'm 9, like, slightly different situation than the one that Thomasin is in.
Yeah. Oh, and that's the surface level reasoning she's giving, besides the fact that it's one less mouth to feed, and they might get a little bit of money, like, in return. Mm-hmm. But, you know, deeper, there's the distrust and the hatred. And then I feel like, too, there's also, like, a theme that develops in terms of, I mean, just kind of the general, like, suspicion and distrust of Thomasin's sexuality.
Yes.
And the fact that, you know, she's starting to get up there a little bit in age, and I think she feels a little threatened by Thomasin's sexuality and, like, the father.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because I don't see any indication whatsoever coming from the father that there's anything like that going on in his mind.
No, I don't think so.
So the mother is only threatened because of the two of them sort of teaming up against her in her mind, right? Mm-hmm. That's all it is. There's no, like, coy glances or weird moments that... Okay.
No, there's no subtext that there actually is anything going on. It's just... I think this movie is also... Like, there's kind of a theme... Maybe that I'm just reading into this, that, you know, the sort of patriarchy poisons everything.
Yeah.
And...
Definitely.
You know, the way that... Especially back in the day, that... Because patriarchy, like, prizes the young virgin so much, that kind of, like, hatred towards that if you're an older woman.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like almost sadder, you know, like, I feel like this movie could have really gone a different way if they wanted to, and made her father a hypocrite in more ways, and had him actually, like, looking lustfully at his own daughter, and given the mother some sort of, like, foundation to base it on.
Sure.
And it would have been believable, but it also would have undercut the paranoia aspect of it a little bit by giving that paranoia actual evidence rather than having it just purely come out of her own fevered brain. Because
and she also hasn't been sleeping. Her baby just disappeared and died, you know. Like, I understand. Kate is, like, probably the most tragic figure in this, besides maybe Thomasin.
Yeah, okay, we're going to talk about a certain scene. But first, we have Thomasin wakes up and goes out into the barn and catches Caleb, who is about to head out into the woods all by his lonesome. And Smart. At first he's like, I'm sorry, I can't bring you with me. And she's like, well, you can either bring me with you or I can go and wake up our parents right the fuck now. So what do you want? And he takes her to go check the traps. And there are a couple of hares that had been caught, which I was like, oh, a rare victory. But it is not to last.
I almost feel like the witches like put that there as just like a almost bait for the humans. We're like, oh yeah, there's food.
Interesting. I like that theory.
That's the way it just felt.
I could get with that.
Yeah.
So yeah, they wind up catching a glimpse of a hare, and Caleb like loses his head. I really like the detail that they already have the hares that they've caught, so he doesn't need to be chasing this one.
That's true. I didn't think about that.
You know what I mean? So it's like almost a greed moment. But
yeah.
I hesitate to use the word greed when people are actually starving to death.
Yeah, it's understandable.
But yeah, so he chases after it along with the dog, and she gets thrown from the horse and like knocked out. So they're gone for a while, and she doesn't come to until like evening is approaching. You can see twilight, and her parents are like screaming for them at the edge of the wood, like no idea where the two of them even went. And she comes stumbling out of the woods, and her brother is not with her, and she does not know where he is. And this looks really bad.
Right.
Meanwhile, we get to see what's actually going on with Caleb.
Just the like shots of him going through the woods are so creepy.
Oh my god.
Those woods are so creepy.
Where is this film? Do you know?
I think it's filmed in New England.
Look this up.
Upper New England, probably.
Where was the VVitch film?
Because Eggers was very like hyper focused on like realism in terms of the setting, and like all the buildings are realistically constructed and all the clothing's realistically constructed.
You could tell with the clothing and stuff. There were a few moments. Let's see. Filmed in Salem, Mass.
Oh, there you go.
Oh wait, no.
Oh.
Sorry, there was a 30-minute question and answer session filmed in Salem, Massachusetts. Never mind. Right. I was about to be like, oh, well, that's really on point.
Yeah.
Ontario, Canada.
Oh, yes. Yeah, so basically southeast Canada, you know, right on the border of New England.
There's a lot of, like, blue filter over things.
Oh, yeah. It's a very blue movie.
It's really effective. I don't know what it is about the color blue that's so friggin' spooky, but it is, though.
Yeah, lots of horror movies use that nowadays.
Yeah. And so her brother is running through the woods. You keep seeing, like, they do some really extra creepy, simple camera work by having the camera stock still a few times, and you just see him running and getting further and further away until he finally, like, runs right off camera.
Right.
Which is such a subtle, simple thing, but really gives you, like, a sense of the depth of this forest.
Right.
And the fact that it's so massive that he just can go right out of the viewpoint, and you can't hear him, you can't see him, and probably if the camera turned by this point, the forest is too dense to be able to see him anymore.
I think there's a shot or two as well where like he's coming towards the camera, which is something this movie does really effectively, I think. And I think a lot of good horror does, where, you know, a person is coming towards the camera looking at something terrible. And so you're not even seeing what's terrible, but you're just seeing their reaction.
Yeah. You're right, they do that a few times with the barn and stuff as well. So he comes across his dog, who has been ripped apart. I have to confess that I did not get a good look at what happened to this dog, because at that point my hands were
disemboweled. Yeah. You get like, a glimpse of it. It's not super gory, but you can see that like its stomach is hanging out.
Yeah.
By the way, when I rewatched this again too, I was like, oh, there's another dog that gets killed. Stephen King all over again.
That's true. I guess because this isn't like set up like we already had a baby get ground up in a mortar and pestle, so the dog doesn't feel quite so egregious at this point. But you're right. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, after all the Dark Tower and It, and it was like another dog dying. Natasha's favorite horror trope.
The Dead Zone.
Yep, that too. I was listening to.
Oh my god.
Yeah, because he kicks the dog to death in that one.
Yes, just friggin' can't help himself, Stephen King.
He's so extra.
Good lord, he really is extra.
When you said that on the podcast, I was like, "That's the perfect way to describe Stephen King."
So he finally sees this hut that's like buried in the woods. And what happens next is like one of the most creepy / surreal / disturbing moments.
And slow.
Very slow.
I like the way too that they play like upon, his lustfulness where he's like, oops.
Yep. Yeah, because she puts her foot out first and she's got like bare ankle and calf, like her leg first. And then when she slides out, she's dressed. It's not like she's naked, but she's got a really low-cut top on and tons of cleavage. Yep. And she's got a really beautiful face. But there is something really off.
Oh, yeah.
About the whole look of her, which it's not directly said, but implied that this is all just a glamour of some kind. Mm-hmm. And he comes toward her as if he's being, like, hypnotized.
Yeah. It's like partially, I don't know, the way I interpret that is that like partially he's out of control and like being glamored, and partially he kind of wants to go to her because he's so repressed sexually, and their society is so repressed sexually.
Yeah, this like, I wonder what it was like to be this actor, this boy in this scene, because I feel like. Let's have a bunch of scenes of you staring at your sister's tits and then getting seduced by a much older woman.
Yeah, and he gets kissed.
He does. And you see her like put her hand up like as if she's going to like cradle the back of his head, and her hand is like
a witch's claw.
Fucked up.
It's so disturbing. And the way too that she like kind of kisses him isn't even really a kiss, and you only see a side angle. Mm-hmm. But it's more like she's just like consuming his mouth.
Yes.
Oh, it's so fucked up.
That's a good way to say it, consuming.
Like he's all, she's like sucking his soul out, kind of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really thought this was going to be the last we saw of him.
Right, yeah.
But it's not.
No, I guess they wanted him to terrorize the family.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't really think I stopped to think about what the objective was here, but it doesn't. It's not clear, and that's fine. I'm not mad about it, but it is sort of like maybe it is just purely like, oh, what would be funny? What if we sent him back and they thought it was going to be okay? Yeah,
I don't know. Like, it's not even necessarily like too important to the movie, but it just kind of feels like they got what they needed from him, and then they let him go just because it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I would have expected that his life was what they needed. So apparently that isn't entirely it. Or if it is, they got it and replaced his life with something else. But it feels like there's still a little of him left in there.
Yeah, he's definitely like still himself later when he kind of comes into his trance.
Yeah.
But, they kind of suck the life energy out of him.
So...
And I don't know, too, if it was... I'm sorry, too. I don't know if it was like a thing maybe in old witch folklore, back in the day when they believed that stuff. Mm-hmm. But like, it seems pretty implied that like he was raped by her.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So, it's kind of like your life force is sucked out of you.
Yeah, that's true. Life force, loss of innocence, the whole shebang, basically.
And it's kind of what he wanted to, which makes it more disturbing.
Yeah. Yeah, so obviously her parents are really like side-eyeing her at this point.
Yeah.
And she is dealing with her mother, like, not wanting to speak to her or be near her. And she goes out to put down the goats again. Mm-hmm. Is this the moment where her mother, like, kisses her on the head? Like, her mother seems to be lashing out at her.
Yes.
But then finally the father confesses about the cup. And her mother, like, kisses her. I can't remember what order this happens in.
Yes. Oh, wait. Yep. So basically the mom's coming at him. William finally confesses the cup thing to take the heat off of Thomason. Mm-hmm. And the mom's kind of falling, like, apart, you know, understandably. She's sleepless, children missing. But the things she says are also, like, very right. She's very correct.
Yeah, she is.
And you can see more of the suspicion between, like, Thomason and the dad, especially when the dad's coming to her defense.
Yeah.
But yes, you're right.
So she goes outside to handle the goats again, and this is when she finds him, like, clinging to the fence. Another one of, like, the creepiest moments in horror ever for me. I, of course, you know, weirdly standing naked body in the dark, expect this to be the witch.
Yeah.
And once I realized the size is all wrong, like, he's way too small, I'm like, wait, what? Because I just didn't expect him to come back. Why would I?
Yeah. And in traditional horror, too, like, you know, Thomason reacts to something. You're like, okay, she's seeing something fucked up. It's the witch. Mm-hmm. But this kid is just, like, loosely hanging onto the fence for dear life, you know, naked in the dark. It's so creepy. So they bring him inside, and he's clearly, like, in a state of shock, suspended in, like, coma. Mm-hmm.
I don't even know what I want to call it. Yep. Oh, you may want to lower your volume a little bit on your headphones because I can hear myself through them a little bit coming through on your mic. But yeah, you're right about this, like, moment of her finding him is really creepy. And when they bring him upstairs, there's, like, scrapes all over him. Like, the look of him, it's obvious that he has physical injuries. But it's really hard for me to tell what they are. Like, it doesn't look like he's been beaten, but it does look like somebody, like, hit him in the face or scratched his face, like, and his arms and everything. Like, yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I'm really curious about what, I want to know, but I don't want to know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of imagine what happens.
So they are bleeding him and, you know, doing all kinds of things to try and, like, restore his health. And we wind up getting the scene with the twins accusing Thomason, finally.
This whole sequence is, like, probably the best part of the movie.
It's bananas.
Shit goes down.
So they accuse her. And, of course, rather than an outright, of course that's not what's happening, you fucking trolls, her father's like, oh, well then, okay, prove that you're not a witch then. To which I was just like, ugh.
Well, with all the crazy shit that's been happening, like, you know, they believe that this stuff happens.
Yep.
And I think, you know, in sequences before, you know, Catherine is talking about this family's cursed, you know, this is not natural. And William keeps denying it, but, you know, he's kind of just telling himself that almost.
Yeah.
So everything comes to the forefront here.
Yeah, and this, like, this thing that the twins do, they not only accuse her, but then they start to imitate his seizure.
Yeah.
And, they commit to this so much that later on, it's not until their father, like, lifts them up and shakes them that they break what they're doing. So,
yeah,
these are little sociopaths.
Yeah, and they're small enough, too, that, like... Oh, Natasha, can you still hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
yeah.
Your video cut out. You're having internet problems or something?
Or okay.
But anyways, yeah, like, it's understandable because they are very small children. They're, like, maybe 4.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, it's almost like they just become so, like, anxious at the situation that they decide that they should just, like, go, you know, comatose in order to, like, take the heat off them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a combo of, like, to take the heat off them, to cement their accusation against their sister, whom they obviously do not like to the degree that they would be fine with her being, like, stoned/burned/cast out, God knows what. Mm-hmm. Which
and as the viewer, sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, like, I wonder if they are really, like, this terrible and would not regret this at all as adults, or if they're that kind of sociopathic that all children can be at times, where they simply don't understand the consequences of what they're doing.
Yeah, well, and they believe all this stuff too, you know? Like, they probably literally believe she is the witch.
Do you think so?
I think they might. And if not, you know, like, they are small and children can kind of be sociopathic. But I was going to say, too, in terms of Logan going to comatose, as the viewer, when you're watching this the first time, you're like, are they being bewitched? What's happening?
Exactly. Like, because they go so still.
Yeah.
It just takes a certain level of commitment that I'm not used to seeing from small children.
Well, and
so
they
I definitely
both do it
like...
simultaneously, so it feels very real, but, like, they're kind of just on the same wavelength.
Yeah, I guess that is why it didn't even occur to me that they believed what they were saying. But there's no real reason for me to, like, go with that, actually. It could be that they believe so deeply in what they're saying that they're on the same wavelength because their fears are so ingrained, and that, yeah, that it's like this automatic...
And they're twins, so, you know, like, in storytelling, you can use the excuse of, like, oh, you know, they kind of are linked mentally. Like, in Haunting the Hill House, actually.
Oh, I haven't gotten there yet. We've watched the first 4 episodes, I think. 3 or 4?
I think it's the next one. I haven't seen them all. I've seen parts of them. But
okay.
Was it Luke and Eleanor are twins?
Oh, okay.
And they're like, oh, yeah, you know, when my sister hurt her ankle, I could feel it, that type of thing.
Okay, gotcha.
Is that just that type of thing, you know? Storytelling trope.
I didn't even realize they were supposed to be twins.
Oh, maybe they mentioned it for the first time in the next episode.
Yeah, everybody in that show looks alike anyway, so anybody could be twins with anybody, and I would be like, yeah, all right, I believe that. So this is when first we have Caleb coughing up an apple.
So fucked up and creepy. Especially because they mentioned earlier, like, oh, we were trying to hunt, we were trying to find apples, we couldn't find any, and then it's almost like the witch is saying, here's your apple. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's like a combo of things happening because apples are also, you know, representative of the forbidden fruit thing.
Yeah.
And him having these lustful desires about his sister, and then the seduction aspect of his, like, enchantment. So there's all sorts of symbolism that can be happening with this apple. And besides the obvious thing, yeah.
And when, too, just the way that, like, he's sort of, like, you know, hitching on something, choking on it, and they're like, what's going on? Like, pry his jaw open. And the mom's still like, don't break his jaw. And then you're like, what's going to come out? And it's very simple and understated, but it's more fucked up. Yeah,
I don't know what I thought was going to happen. I guess I thought maybe he'd start vomiting, like straight up vomiting, or that, like, his jaw would just keep opening and something else was going to come out. Like, it wasn't actually him that... Well, I thought it might be the witch. That she was, like, in his body somehow and had disguised herself, you know, like, because I don't know what she's capable of at this point. Like, everything is crazy.
And that'd be cool, but that's almost, like, too modern horror.
Yeah, agreed.
And this is very, like, old school, simple.
So, this is finally when he drags his daughter outside, William, and starts, like, telling her to just be honest about the fact that she's a witch. Just tell the truth. Just go ahead and tell the truth, and then I can help you.
Can we back up a second?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Because we kind of gloss over, like, his, like, possession is a word for it. I almost think he's low on blood because they were bleeding him, you know, he had the shock and trauma, and then he starts, like, reciting, like, this weird speech almost.
Yes. I forgot about this.
And the look on his face, like, he's in so much pleasure.
This is the creepiest part of this whole movie to me.
Yes.
This little actor, I don't know where they fucking found this kid, but the range of what he was able to do in this movie is frankly astounding for somebody of his age.
So good.
He's talking about like the rapture of Christ, and as he's doing it, he's like dragging his fingers like, over his skin.
Ecstasy.
Like, it's so horrifying.
Well, and at first too, he's talking about like, she's upon me, something, something, she. I don't remember exactly how it goes because there's a lot. But so you're like, you know that he's like kind of talking about the witch, but for the people in the room too, it almost sounds like Thomason.
Right.
So there's that aspect, and then it just becomes as he's like dying, he's just like reveling in the ecstasy of like Christ, but it's just so like creepy and weird.
It's done in a really sexual way, as it should be. Extremely sexual. Like, yeah, there's like another, as if to point out that people can use this weird religion to give themselves an outlet for other repressed parts of themselves.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, there's sort of a weird parallel here to him dying while feeling this for Christ when the witch was seducing him and killing him as well. Like,
yeah, it definitely feels like witch influenced in terms of like him dying in like ecstasy.
The expression on his face too, because it showed like the camera work in that scene. The camera's directly above him. So as he like sits up and his back arches and everything, his face comes closer to the camera. And for a moment, you almost think that, is he like floating off the ground right now?
Yeah.
Like, I definitely had a moment where I was not sure that wasn't happening. And the look in his eyes is so, oh God, it's just, he really committed to this role a lot. Like, I can't, just thinking about it's fucking freaking me out again.
It's so creepy.
That's why I glossed over it, because I didn't want to talk about it because it's so creepy.
Oh, part of the reason, well, I mean, obviously you could write whatever you want, but part of the reason why this probably like works so well too is that it's 100% authentic. Like, this is a literal word for word transcript of like witch trial stuff.
Is it?
It's like word for word, he just like transferred it over into the script.
This particular speech that he gives?
Yes. I don't know, like, the context of, like, you know, what the person in real life was saying. Like, you know, if it was a testifying or whatnot. But they looked at, you know, hundreds of, like, historical documents and stuff.
Wow. That's interesting. Can't imagine the context for this kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's... Yeah.
So, yeah, he falls back dead.
Yeah.
And, of course, Kate freaks out and starts screaming at Thomason to get outside, get away from him. I don't want you here. I don't want you anywhere near this house. And this is when her father's like, why don't you just tell us that you're a witch, girl? Why don't you just say the truth? And this is when Thomason snaps. She has had it.
Yes, girl.
It's so satisfying, though.
It is.
She's like, oh, really? Truth? When you let her think that I had stolen it and you didn't step in and say what had actually happened until it was too late, is that truth? Letting him lie for you and saying that, oh my God, when she gets on him about you can't farm, you can't hunt, the only thing you can do is chop wood.
Yep.
That was a low blow, girl. I'm not mad at you, but damn, that's cold-blooded.
She just digs right into his heart.
The whole thing about that toxic masculinity patriarchy deal is like the main function of the man in the relationship is to provide for his family, and he is failing.
Yep.
And she hit him right where it hurt with that one. You can see, like, that is when he tells her to stop the devil's tongue wagging in her head, and then he finally calls her a bitch and like grabs her and shoves her.
Yep.
Woo. So, oh man, that's so good though. Like, was it truth when you let him pretend that you went for apples because you were too much of a fucking coward? You're letting your wife rule you. You can't even tell her what's going on. Just everything about that whole like takedown. I was just like, oh shit.
And of course, like, Anya Taylor-Joy is such a good actress.
She's so good.
I think she was
so
18
beautiful.
when this was
Oh my
made.
God, too. Like, she's so pretty. It's gross.
Have you seen Split?
No. Is she in that?
Yes, that was like her... I mean, this was her first movie. That was the one that kind of like, made her popular in the mainstream is Split. She's like the girl that the villain kidnaps.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yep.
So at this point, she says that it's the twins.
Yep.
And you could easily read this as she's just throwing somebody else in her family under the bus to get suspicion off her, which it very well may be. Mm-hmm. But frankly, as a viewer, you're like, yes, it's clearly the twins.
They're the worst.
Jesus.
They talk to the black goat like it's Satan. They
talk to the goat and tell you that they talk to the fucking goat.
Yeah.
What more do you need? How has this not been the thing that occurred to you guys before your daughter? Mm-hmm. This should have been a problem for you already. Like, as somebody who had a very superstitious, puritanical father, my dad didn't even like, I had those little poison dart frog figurines from, like, the nature store.
Okay.
He did not like me having those because frogs were representative of the devil.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. My mom had a heart-shaped crystal hanging from her rear view mirror, and he took it and threw it away because crystals are of the devil.
Wow.
Like, all of this stuff, they should not have been cool with their kids chit-chatting with a fucking black-horned beast with cloven hooves.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of an oversight of the script.
But he drags her inside and makes her, like, bear witness against her own brother and sister, basically. Mm-hmm. And then goes and grabs them up and shakes them while saying that he's not going to be part of these, like, childish games and tricks.
Yeah.
And they just start squealing, which was pretty satisfying.
Oh, he shakes them too, but basically he says, like, all right, I don't know what the instrument he wanted was, but he's like, all right, I'll get my hammer, let's do this. Mm-hmm.
And locks them into the barn and nails the boards over it until morning.
Yeah, all the kids.
So, I guess in morning they're going to head back to the plantation is the plan. It's too late to do that now. Mm-hmm. But he's not going to leave them roaming around the property.
It almost feels like I mean, that's the reason stated, but it feels part of it to me like it's almost a bit of a test, Like, if one of you are the witches, one of you three, then, mm-hmm. Something will happen here to prove it. Right.
That makes sense. So, spoiler alert, something happens.
Do you want to do that part first, or do you want to talk about the mom inside the house?
Let's talk about the mom.
Yeah, that happens sequentially first.
God. Okay, so first she's like gets up out of bed, and you can tell something's weird about this because of the way that she's moving. She does not have her nightcap on is the other thing, so it's the first time we ever see her hair the whole movie.
That's true.
And she sees Caleb sitting with Sam in his arms, just sitting there.
Yeah, looking like little angels.
Yeah, and she's not alarmed by this. Like, of course, viewers are like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
What are they doing here? But she's like, oh, you're here. And goes and sits, and he's like, Mother, would you like to see us always? We have longed to see you so. We could see each other every day. Look at this book before you.
Yes.
And okay, here was my theory, and what it turns out to be is kind of like more fucked up, but I thought, because she takes Sam and she's like, oh, he's hungry, let me feed him, and puts the baby to her breast. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, is she being glamored and that's a witch sucking her breast milk right now? Mm-hmm. And it is, we see later, a crow biting the shit out of her breast.
Yeah, just pecking at it.
Oh my, and she's like laughing wildly as it's happening.
Yeah, laughing and kind of in ecstasy again.
She doesn't sign the book though, right?
We don't see anything like that. I think it's kind of just like implied she must have signed something.
Oh man. So as that's happening out in the barn, the twins notice something crouched near the goat,
Yep.
the white goat.
You hear a noise, like on the roof, and then...
The scuttling. It's that noise. And it's unclear, is she, like, drinking the milk or the blood of the goat?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Can you tell if the goat's alive or not?
The goat's alive because the goat's standing.
Oh.
But
Okay.
I couldn't quite tell, like, what exactly she was doing.
Yeah, I think she's kind of, like, drinking the milk / blood. That, or she's just kind of, you know, starting in on the udders and starting to eat meat. But yeah, it's very poorly lit. You know, they're in this, like, shed in moonlight. And you just can see this, you know, naked flesh. And then it's just kind of, you know, hunched over, just doing something.
And they're going like, what is that? One of them saying Flora?
I think that was the goat's name.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it's ever said, but, like, that's what you're supposed to get out of it.
Gotcha. Okay, because I really was like, wait, isn't his sister Mercy? Okay, Flora. And yeah, they're just, like, watching this, and finally this, like, the witch turns around and, like, comes toward them, and we see Thomasin watching and screaming also. But we don't actually get, like, again, it cuts away before we actually see what happens here.
Yep. Yeah, you just see the witch look over her shoulder, and you just get a brief glimpse in the dim light of her, like, you know, ugly face, and then she just starts cackling.
She's got a real, like, she's got no teeth.
Yeah.
She's got, like, she just looks crazy. It's horrifying.
Yeah.
And we go, that's, like, we go from there to seeing the crow that's, like, biting the hell out of Kate's breast. And then all of a sudden it's morning.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, okay. I guess we're just going to skip over everything in the middle there. And when William wakes up and gets out of bed, the way that Kate's eyes open and watch him, listen, I 100% thought that she was possessed at this point.
Yeah, well, I mean, she sort of is. She's not, like, possessed, but she's, you know, she's a broken woman. Yeah, she's cracked. She's of Satan.
This look that she has, it's just like...
Such a good actress.
She really is.
She's so great.
I
guess
feel
she
a
does
little
kind of
bad
play...
that
She does kind of play a broken mother, too, in Leanna, huh?
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like she always gets cast as, like, the hatchet-faced harpy with, like, weird issues with their children and lovers. Like, I don't know, I feel bad about that particular trope always being handed to her, but she does it so well.
I mean, yeah, she's just a good actress all around.
Yeah.
Even when she's, like, kind to people, or, like, earlier in the movie.
When was she kind to anybody?
Well, not very much, but there's, you know, a few, like, nicely spoken words. And even, like, with the second time when Thomasin goes out and sees her brother.
Oh, right.
You know, she's like, come here, child. And at first you're like, what the fuck she's gonna do? But then she just kisses her nicely on the head and sends her out.
Yeah. So he goes outside and sees that the barn is torn apart and the goat's dead. And are the twins also dead?
See, I was actually discussing this with my girlfriend. I think you just don't... They're not there. They're just gone.
So maybe the twins got...
Yeah. You see the two dead goats. You see Thomas on the ground, and then she looks up. And I think that's all you see.
So it really looks to him at this moment like it is Thomasin that's the witch. And she gave the babies away to the devil again. Twins this time, so she gets extra credit. But there's, like, blood, like, it's a disaster.
And it's just, like, so shocking to look upon.
Yeah, it's just such outright chaos, considering this movie has been, like, low-key this whole time.
Yes, and how does this, like, little hut get torn apart? Oh, and also, just the way, too, that the scene starts is he walks outside, he looks towards the scene, but we don't know what's there yet.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's just like 30 seconds of him just slowly walking towards it with a look of shock upon his face. And that's like so good. Like, I wish more horror would do that. Just the look on his face, and you're just like, what is he looking at?
It was so, like, this was one of the prime moments of me, like, being ready to tear my face off. I was freaking out.
Mm-hmm. It's so good.
And yeah, when he turns around away from the carnage, guess who's there? Black Phillip with his horns.
Yeah,
and he gores
you
Dad.
Don't even see the first part. You don't even see the first blow. He's just like shoved back.
Mm-hmm. And he looks like he's going to try and fight Black Phillip, and then all of a sudden sort of gives up.
Yeah, he's just
what is his last word?
Fault.
He says something like the corruption. I am the child of corruption, or something like that.
Something about corruption for sure. Oh, also, like, this part I think kind of plays into the night before. You know, he locks his children away. He's chopping wood again as like self-punishment.
Right.
And then he's just like mourning his own pride. He's infected with the filth of pride.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, he gets hit with the goat. He picks up the axe, and then it's just like, this is all my fault. Just take me.
Yeah, it's so frustrating when somebody claims to understand that they have pride, but in that they also have to like dictate what the punishment's going to be, because their pride is so much that they can't simply like lay themselves at the mercy of whatever is in power here. Mm-hmm. They have to there's still this moment of, well, all right, well, I guess it's almost like that martyr complex with, if you criticize a certain person at all and their response is, well, I guess I just better leave then. Mm-hmm. And that feels like sort of what he's doing is like, I guess I'm so prideful that I've ruined everything. Just kill me, God. Yeah. Just do it.
Almost its own type of pride rather than trying to fight for his family.
Right. Like, just be a better person. Work harder to be good. You don't get to just die. That's not how this works. That's super selfish and way easy. No. But yeah, he gets gored. Seems like he's going to fight back, and then doesn't. And Philip does not gore him again, just headbutts him like into the house until all of the wood that he spent this like entire movie chopping up, pours down over his head. Yeah,
and the camera's very like far back too, so you just get like the house, and he's just lying there with wood falling upon him.
Yep. So he's dead. I wasn't entirely sure if he was gonna be. I thought he might wind up coming back.
Like when she's being attacked by the mother, you thought maybe he'd save her?
Not even that. I thought, I guess, that she might like escape the mother and think she was done. And then he would come up and be like, you killed your mother. Like, it would be like that kind of thing that they do at the end of a lot of horror or action movies, where they pretend that everything is taken care of, and then there's a sudden like extra ending. Yeah. Did you get what I mean?
Which is extra, and this movie is not.
Yes. So he goes down, and then her mom comes out. Yeah. It's upsetting.
Yeah, she's real crazed.
The look on her face, like, she looks like the witch in that moment of like, I'm looking at a screen cap right here of her like trying to strangle her daughter with the blood pouring off of her face. Yeah. And she looks like a demon in that moment. She just looks like a different person than she's looked like this entire film. And she's telling her, I know that you already seduced your brother and that you were working on your father. Yep. And you were casting eyes at him like some whore. Yep. It's so upsetting. She's a fucking child. Like, how insecure do you have to be that your own daughter is threatening to you? Sure. But that's like
at this point she's completely cracked.
There is that in a lot of it's not necessarily the daughter, but the stepdaughter.
Oh,
with
sure.
like, you know, the mother was so worried because the daughter was growing up so beautiful that she sent her away and locked her in a tower or ordered her to be killed or whatever. I'm realizing now, like, there's one scene, and I won't say that it's hinting at impropriety at all, but it is one scene that we did not mention that may be part of the fuel in her mother's fevered brain.
Okay.
Which is when she tells her daughter to wash her father's clothes, Thomasin undresses him.
Yeah, yeah.
Like straight, he doesn't unbutton his shirt and hand it to her. She goes over and unbuttons his shirt and takes it off of him.
Mm-hmm. And those abs, by the way.
Yo, he is fit, right? Like, where did that come from?
A great dad bod.
I was just like, okay, shit.
It was
that and that voice.
I know.
No problem.
That was a sexy man. Like strange looking, but sexy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What is it that on Sex and the City she says something about how she's like worried because she's having amazing sex with this guy who's actually really ugly, and her gay friend is like, ugly sex is hot. And I was like, okay, weird reaction, but sure.
Yes.
But yeah, so that moment where she's like undressing him, I remember being personally pretty uncomfortable during the scene because it takes a while. They don't have her rush and do that quickly either. It's like this kind of lingering moment that doesn't feel like it has to be handled that way.
Yeah, especially because this movie doesn't linger any longer than it needs to.
Yeah.
I think you're probably right. That was probably intentional. Just kind of like, I don't know, just that moment almost of like, you know, possible sexuality. Like,
yeah.
Even though it's not, the fact that it like borders on it, maybe that fuels the mother a little.
Yeah, when you're so repressed, anything can be assigned that sort of intent.
Yeah.
So she winds up like being able to grab a like a trowel or something.
Yeah, I think it's a hatchet actually.
Is it a hatchet? Oh shit, that's harsh.
Yeah.
And she kills her mom. And there's like a long moment of her laying there with her mother on top of her, like, and she like lays exhausted as if she's sort of waiting for something and then realizes that nothing is going to happen. And so she finally shoves her mom off. And she goes into the house and just like takes off her outer dress that's covered in blood and like lays at the table and falls asleep.
Yeah, just completely, you know, in shock and drained.
And it goes dark, and I really thought that was the end of the movie.
Mm.
I was like, okay, I guess that's where we're gonna wrap it up. But
yeah, especially for a movie as restrained as this one is, like, there's kind of several false endings.
Yeah. And it would have been fine if it ended there. I wouldn't even have been that, like, I wouldn't have been mad about it. I would just have been like, huh, interesting, okay.
Yeah, it's a legitimate choice that could have been made.
But instead, we get a way more intense ending where she goes into the barn and decides that she is going to try and communicate with Black Phillip like her creepy ass little brother and sister did.
And I love the way too that she kind of treks across the farm, and then, you know, you got this like wide shot of like the little barn.
Yeah.
And Black Phillip is like there outside. And then he kind of like leads her in.
This is so creepy.
There's little touches like that are way more scary than most modern horror.
Yeah, I think it's just how it takes its time and just lets you really absorb the like potential in a moment, so that you get a chance to let your brain go in all kinds of directions and get terrified before anything actually happens.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
So she says, like, I'm conjure you to speak with me. Can you understand my English tongue? And unexpectedly, Black Phillip answers her.
In this whisper.
I can't remember what the first thing is that he says to her. It's just something like, "What would you have of me?"
Yeah, I'm actually looking at the transcripts. Black Phillip says, "What dost thou want?"
Right. What dost thou offer?
Thomas says, "What canst thou give?"
And here comes a couple of lines that I have heard all over the place and did not know they were from this.
I probably spoiled you too, actually.
I don't know if you like
On
you may
off-topic
have, but
page.
it's been a minute. Like enough people have
Memed.
quoted this.
Yeah.
Dost thou want the taste of butter? Something like that.
Mm-hmm. Would thou
And-
like the taste of butter?
Wouldst thou like to live deliciously?
Well, the middle line is, at least according to the transcript, is, would thou like the taste of butter? A pretty dress?
A pretty dress.
Would thou like to live deliciously?
See the world.
Yeah, Thomason pauses, says yes. Then Black Phillip says, would thou like to see the world?
What? Okay.
This is like it's really strange in the moment, and you're like, is this movie jumping the shark? But
I still can't quite decide.
well, I think afterwards, when you think about it, it makes more sense, like, in terms of the themes. Like, this movie, I think, kind of, like, plays it both ways. You know, it's like a folktale that's, like, super realistic that you would expect those people to tell back then.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I feel like has this modern bent and modern message in moments where it's like, here's the themes that I'm trying to tell you in terms of, like, the toxic patriarchy and just the repression of women. Because, like, Thomason has the most shitty life.
Yeah.
She gets the shit from every angle.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if I'm her in this movie, I'm like, yeah, I'd like some butter.
Mm-hmm.
Like, butter. I'd like a pretty dress. I'd like to see the world. That sounds fucking great.
Yeah, you know, like, honestly, if I, like, life in the past sucked. I did a whole unsober episode about how the past sucked. And if it takes killing a baby, maybe being a witch is still fine. I'm just saying.
Yeah, like...
I'm not a big fan of babies, Lord knows. Whatever.
Like, if I was a woman in the past, I can't even... Well, one, I can't even imagine how hard that'd be. It's hard enough to be a woman now. But, like, I would feel... I would just want things, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Understandably.
And wanting just because you know that it's not even on the table.
Yeah.
Like, I may not really want it, but to be told outright that that's not for me immediately is just so rude. Just how dare.
And they're just so controlled and so repressed, and life is so just unpleasureful. There's no pleasure in life.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so she winds up saying yes, and he says, take off your shift, look at the book. Yep. And you see him walk past her, and he's suddenly a dude wearing cowboy boots with spurs on?
I didn't even notice the boots.
Did you see that?
I just saw the cloak.
You didn't see the boots?
No, I didn't.
All right, that's making me second guess myself because I'm pretty sure there were boots, but like I'm going to
the transcript here says, as Black Phillip's left hoof leaves frame, his right foot crosses, now in the shape of a gaudy cavalier's boot with a jangling gold spur. You're right.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and when he says too, like, remove thy shift. Like, I'm afraid in this moment that the movie is going to go too far. But thankfully it is restrained enough.
Yeah, when he says that and puts his hand on her shoulder, I was like...
Right. Like, obviously it's implied, you know, that she's about to sleep with the devil. But you don't need to see that. You know what's happening.
So then we see her walking naked through the woods. And one would think that I knew this was coming because the naked silhouette of a woman walking through the woods at night is the image for the banner of this episode.
Right.
But I didn't. So sue me.
If I can pause you again for 1 sec, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's like, signed the book, and she's like, I cannot write my name. because it just drives home again
right.
to, like, how, like, you know, shitty her life is. I don't think she can write.
Yeah. No reading or writing.
Yeah.
Absolute bare, yeah.
So,
and he says,
like,
I will guide thy hand.
Yes, in this the creepiest whisper. And I like, too, the movie doesn't just outright show him, you know?
Mm-hmm.
He's just this creepy whisper.
I will guide thy hand. Yeah, I'll bet
Then you get
will.
that music beat.
So when she goes out into the woods, we find like a coven of witches. There's like 5 women out there already.
Yeah, I think there's like 5 to 7 or something.
And it never even occurred to me that there was more than one witch. And I'm not sure that there is necessarily supposed to be more than one that's terrorizing her family specifically.
Sure.
I was waiting for the camera to like pan and see her mother there somewhere, despite her being dead. I still kind of wondered if she might show up. But
yeah,
they start to rise into the air around the fire. And she joins up with them. And she seems to be in a bit of a trance initially, but starts to come back to herself. And as she rises into the air, she starts laughing.
Yeah.
And looking like she is finally free.
Ecstasy.
Like, it really is this moment of just like, oh my God, finally.
Yes.
I can just be. What is this?
Yeah.
And that is the end of the movie, is the close-up of her face as she's laughing in the firelight, floating in the dark.
I love the way, too, that sort of the shot as she's floating up, it just follows her face, and, you know, her face changes, she starts laughing, and, like, her head, like, rears back, too, so the shadows play upon it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just, the whole ending, like I said, when it ended, I was just sitting there like, what?
Yeah.
But it's honestly, in a weird way, like, yeah, she signed a deal with the devil, okay, sure. But also, it's kind of like a weirdly positive ending.
Yeah, it's kind of her victory, at least, like, when you look at it from a modern perspective.
Yeah. Like, her family were all toxic except for Caleb. Caleb was the one who I feel like had a good heart and really was genuinely, like, interested in being a good person and listening and trying to, like, do his best for reasons beyond just himself.
I agree.
But poor Caleb was already gone, so there's nothing to be done there.
Yep.
So she's well shot of them, I say.
Yeah. Yeah. And, like, when you're first watching the movie after it's so restrained, the ending seems so extra. And, you know, from a certain perspective it is. Like, you could have cut it, like, I feel, like, with her looking at the tree. You know, that her father was saying, like, oh, we'll plant a weed out to that tree there, and next spring, won't it be great? And then, you know, just everything's in ruin, cut.
Yeah.
But, like, and that certainly would have been valid, but I kind of like the way it played just because it completes the cycle of her becoming the witch.
And it sort of, like, introduces the idea that all of the women in this coven are all from families that just, like, fucked everything up so badly.
Yes.
That they had nowhere else to turn and nothing else to do if they wanted to be free, but to completely, like, shed society. And
the patriarchy is so overbearing and toxic that these women are almost like the rebels who got away.
I'm quoting Sex and the City for the second time this episode, but there's a moment where Miranda and Carrie are going out trying to find Halloween costumes. And Miranda says, "It's infuriating. The only 2 costumes I can find are evil witch or sexy kitten." And Carrie says, "You just said a mouthful there, sister." And I feel like that's what, like, either be the good, dutiful wife or an actual witch. You get those 2. Those are your options. Enjoy.
And that's how society viewed you. Either you were the good, dutiful wife or you were an evil whore.
This poor thing. Well, good for her. Although I don't look forward to the moment when she has to finally kill a baby. But, because I figure that's just inevitable. That's happening.
Yeah.
Whatever family winds up taking over the homestead that they left behind. As long as she's able to move the bodies and trick people into thinking it's a friendly place to live.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like, from a certain perspective, like, it's kind of a victory, and this is, like, what's good for her, but it is a story, too, that's supposed to be told from the perspective of people from those times. Right. So she has become an evil creature.
So that was a really good movie. I really enjoyed this. Thank you very much for commissioning this, because it was one of those that I have so many on my list, not only of horror, but also of like historical fiction and stuff, of movies that I know that I would like and I want to watch, but I have to have a reason, because when I have my own regular downtime, I want to just relax and be chill and not scraping the skin off my own face.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this gave me a good reason to scrape my skin off my face, so thanks.
Also, too, I don't think we mentioned it too much. It's a very slow movie.
Yeah.
It's only an hour and a half. I love that. It is quick. Like, and especially on the rewatch, too, I was like, it almost feels like there should be in-between scenes here to, like, really linger on things.
Yeah.
But it's really, like bare bones in a good way, where it's like, it's just what you need.
Agreed.
And apparently, too, like, when they were filming it, it was a small budget, his first directing role. They filmed, like, an hour and 35 minutes, and the movie's an hour and a half. So, like, they even filmed at bare bones. Like, he knew exactly what he wanted.
That's pretty amazing. Like, I'm used to now friggin' these big blockbusters where they refilm, like, 3/4 of the movie 6 months before it's about to be released, and I'm just like... So that's pretty cool that he was that tight with it.
Yes.
As somebody who takes planning very seriously and respects that.
Yeah, and props. I told you, too, he's the type of guy who went, did hundreds of hours of study on the Salem witch trials and all that type of culture and that type of thing.
Man.
Yeah, actually, too, talking about how tight this movie is, another movie that was on your list, Hereditary, which I liked quite a bit. It has some problems. But one of the biggest problems for me with that movie is it's like 2 hours and 20 minutes. And it's like, this is just too much in a horror movie. Like, you can only draw out that tension so long.
Yeah. That's one that I've seen. Well, I won't say. I have not been spoiled for like plot beats. I've been spoiled for like the people's overall impression of like the arc of it.
Yeah.
But I'm still really curious to watch.
It's a good movie. It has problems, but I think it's worth it. It's another one, too, that's good in the way that it doesn't rely on jump scares. It's more like the slow dread.
Yeah, I don't mind a jump scare here and there, but I really appreciate when movies don't. Like, that was part of what I expected to be a huge factor in The Exorcist, and there were actually almost no jump scares in that movie at all.
Yes.
So, I'm a big fan of the tension. And just good acting, man. Like that, even if a story isn't that great, if people can compellingly get it across, oftentimes I can overlook that while I'm watching it, at least.
Hereditary, too. I'm sure you've heard it has some great performances.
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
Tony Collien, especially as the mom, is just fantastic.
And I have never seen her in anything but like a comedic role, really. So that'd be interesting.
There's a dinner scene, kind of like this one, actually, in that movie, where her and her son are having a discussion, I suppose you could call it. Mm-hmm. And the acting from both of them is just so great. There's just so many emotions at play.
All right. Well, is there anything that you wanted to plug before we wrap this one up?
No, I don't do anything too exciting. I have no internet presence besides for Facebook and my groups and your group.
All right. Well, guys, you know where to find me. Facebook.com/unspoiledpod, Twitter at unspoiledshow, Instagram at unspoiledpodcast. And you can commission an episode if you would like at unspoiledpodcast.com/shop. I was about to do Facebook again. Facebook runs my life, I swear to God. It's not fair. But thank you very, very much again for commissioning this. This was a lot of fun. And for doing it as a wannabe episode. Because it's always nice to be able to... I don't mind doing them solo, but it is refreshing to have somebody to bounce back and forth with.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and too, in this type of format... they're probably bringing extra insight into it because they've looked at articles and that type of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Especially, something like this. This has got a lot of layers to it. So, all right. Well, thank you everybody so much for listening. I hope that you enjoyed it. And I'm hoping that there might be at least one more Halloween movie before the season is up. We'll see. And those of you who are patrons, we're going to have the cocktail hour on Halloween proper this year. So check that out. It's going to be at 8 p.m. on October 31st.
Ooh.
Yeah, so that'll be fun. And I'm not sure who all is going to be able to make it. It may just be me all by myself again, but we'll see. Maybe somebody comes. So, all right, guys. Thank you again. And until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.